Hey, what's going on? I'm coming to you from my production studio, otherwise known as my backyard. Episode number 8, What's the Big Idea with Charles Galloway, is now out. Charles is a candidate running for the District 4 position on the Board of County Commissioners, the BCC, here in Walton County. I sit down with Charles and get to know he is a native Waltonian and a graduate of Florida State. He earns his living as a marketing professional, assisting the property managers and real estate professionals in the area market their inventory. I was excited to talk to Charles because this is his first time running for any elected office, and personally, I believe we need fresh thinking to solve some of the more creative challenges we face as a county. The kind of thinking that sometimes can be stifled by overexposure to the bureaucracy of government. Also, I had a particular impression of who I would meet when I finally interviewed Charles Galloway, the person behind the guerrilla marketing character Charlie Hustle. Yeah, if you haven't seen Charlie Hustle, give that a Google, would you? Charles Galloway is not who I was expecting. So check out episode number 8, What's the Big Idea with Charles Galloway. You know, I really appreciate you sitting down with me and being willing to talk about your candidacy for District 4, Board of County Commissioners.
It is District 4, yes.
And I've known you for a little while. We talk politics every now and then. You are a real estate agent. You have a license. I have a license, and so that sort of crossed our paths a little bit. You're big into marketing, and as a real estate person, you know, marketing is a lot of what we do. And I think you came on my radar a couple of years ago. Let's see, the first thing was the Charlie Hustle. Right?
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty good. For a minute, I didn't know if Charlie Hustle was a real guy or, you know, just a character you played.
He might be.
But before we get into all those interesting details, you know, where are you from? What have you done in the past couple of years, and how'd you get here?
Yeah, well, born and raised Grayton Beach. You know, I've lived here my whole life, lifelong resident. You know, went to Bay Elementary, and I graduated Florida State University, and, you know, I've always lived here. You know, always lived on 30A. 30A is it's really all I know. You know, it's a unique place we have here, and I don't really know any other way, essentially. So a lot of the reason why I'm running is, you know, I for one, I would just be on a personal level, couldn't be more proud or honored at the opportunity to represent, you know, my fellow citizens. You know? Now, there's a lot of other reasons why I'm running. There's a lot of issues, which I'm sure we'll talk more on. But, you know, I'm just really very, very proud of being from Walton County, and very proud and honored to be in the situation that I'm in.
So you graduated from Florida State. You came right back here.
I did. I was. My brother lives out in Los Angeles. I was out there. I guess I planned on moving out there with him, and I went out there to visit for a while, for about 6 months. I did not like it, so I came back here.
Different world for sure.
Yeah, and we talk about infrastructure problems. You know, we definitely have infrastructure problems here, but, you know, if you go out there, you start seeing that our problems are nothing compared to them out there. Also, you know, I mean, they've got people like living on the streets, and you see just streets of homeless people, and it actually, every time I go out there to visit my brother, you know, it makes me very thankful for what we have here. You know, I think we always need to be working on improving, obviously. Like, you know, we're never finished. You know, we always need to be striving for that. But we also need to not always just look at the negatives. You know, we need to be thankful for what we have, and you know, try to always be making it better. You know, and not, you know, the problems of Walton County will never be solved by skepticism and cynics and, you know, people whose horizons are limited just to like the obvious realities in front of them. You know, you have to have people and leaders who, you know, can kind of dream of things that we've never had, you know, and say, why not? And want to go get that, rather than just focusing on, you know, what we did wrong yesterday or in years past.
Have you got any specific examples you'd bring up as in terms of mistakes in the past that seem relevant right now?
Well, obviously infrastructure is what all the cool kids in Walton County politics are talking about, and we do have infrastructure problems. I refer to them more as like, growing pains. I mean, if you look at, we just went through redistricting, meaning there was a new census done, and they do the census every 10 years. And from 2010, we have grown 38% in population, which is so much higher than the national average. I think the United States grew 6% in that time. And the average growth of an area, is, if it's more than 10% in 10 years, then that's a lot. But we're at 38%. So how could we not have infrastructure problems when you have 38% more people than 10 years ago? And we're doing, everything in government goes slow. It takes time. That's just the reality. But, it's kind of like a glass is half full, half empty, or half full. A lot of people act like, oh, this is just so terrible, our government has failed us, and it's like, we're growing by leaps and bounds every year. So many people want to live here. They're coming here like refugees out of California, escaping oppressive situations to live here. You could argue that that's, that we're very successful and we're a great place to live, and that's our duty as the leaders and the community leaders to make sure that we're providing a safe environment and things like that. But
what would you say is the number one infrastructure category, or point to a detail within infrastructure that you can talk about that needs some attention?
Number one, I would say is just traffic. There's too many cars. We need more roads and turning lanes and stoplights and bike paths, or we need to find ways to, like in places like 30A, for example, we need to figure a way to have fewer cars, commuting down 30A. We've got Highway 98 there. Thank God that we have 98. Let's just get them to 98 and they won't use 30A, and that goes back to, connector roads and things like that. And, so I would say the main thing is down on 30A or in Miramar. We're packing them in. Everybody wants to come here. They're all bringing a car, but it's like, there's just nowhere, when they get into 38, there's just nowhere for them to go. And back to, one of my big issues is public transportation. They don't have any other choice when they're on 30A to, if they want to go out to eat, or, let's say they're staying in Seagrove and they want to go eat at the Red Bar, they have to take a car, but why don't we have a situation where they don't have to take a car? Because I promise you, when people are on vacation, their number one focus and goal is not to be driving their car. Like, if anything, if there was an option for them to not drive, I know they would do it. And I actually think it would improve our destination if we gave them a reason to not have to drive. I see it in Breckenridge, I see it in Vail, the ski resorts, even, more traditional metropolitan places like Manhattan, or Chicago. When I go to Manhattan, I don't think about having a car. There's a subway, there's Uber, there's taxis. It's kind of what makes cities like that cool to go to, because you can get anywhere you want. Even if you don't have a car, you can get there, and it's affordable, it's cheap, it's reliable. Like on the subway, you go into the subway station. There's a little sign that says, the next train comes in 4 minutes and 38 seconds. So it's reliable. So you'll use it more and more. We could have that on 30A. We've got the money for it. The TDC makes a killing every year. Thank God for that. And there's only certain things that we can use that money for.
Is public transportation one of them?
It definitely could be, put it that way. We most definitely could, that's where, a being skilled in politics comes in. There's definitely, because that would be such a big part of the vacation experience, you most definitely could use. You could find a way. And if anyone says you can't, they haven't tried hard enough yet. Now, there's other things like while we're talking on, I hope we can talk more about bed tax. I really wish we could use bed tax to fix our infrastructure, to build more roads and things like that, or fix things in the north end, or use it to fund a hospital, in the north end that we don't have. But we can't. We are. Now, the state statute does limit what you can spend bed tax on. Basically, I know that, statute backwards and forwards. The only two main functions that we can really use it for is one, for funding the TDC. It's actually three. We can buy beach with it, buy property with it, and we can use it to market, like on marketing and advertising, trying to get more people here. Now, the theory behind that, where that all originated, is because it's regulated by the state legislature. Disney, has a lot of political weight in the state of Florida, and they had a lot to do with putting that in the statute, to where essentially Orange County and Citrus County would spend most of their bed tax marketing dollars promoting Disney World. And as a marketing person, I understand that marketing and advertising is extremely expensive. It's a business, it's an entity, it's an institution that fails 80% of the time. That's why it's so hard and so frustrating. It's like, I know you were a football player, but I was a baseball player, and my coach used to say, if you fail in baseball, if you fail 70% of the time, your whole career, you're in the Hall of Fame, because a 300 batting average, is so good. But that means you got out 7 out of 10 times. Well, marketing is like that. Okay, it's very expensive. You could put a business, you can go out of business trying to market. Well, Disney knows that. Yeah. They wanted someone else to pay for their marketing. So right now, the state of Florida, bed tax, just for those two counties, is paying for Disney. But the whole state has to follow that rule. Meaning, so let's just change the law. It takes citizens lobbying their state legislatures, like their representatives, and also commissioners, like I hope to be, lobbying the same legislature and pointing out that we can't put in the infrastructure to keep these people safe. And it's not just here, north of the bay. People come, to get here, people have to go through Paxton, and New Harmony, and there is a really unsafe situation up there with the traffic coming through there. Now, how could you not argue that tourism is not the cause of that? If these are people coming to the beach, that they are tourists, and we don't have the infrastructure to pay for it way up there. So it just seems like you could use money that we're collecting off these same people driving through to put in traffic infrastructure, or more roads, or widen the roads, or put more lanes. And you especially when you have a public safety problem, which I truly believe we do. And the thing about government is, the first thing we're always doing is, on every issue, is we got to figure out how we're going to pay for it. That's the whole ball game. We're a really wealthy county, tax base, which we are, but still there's always rules on how you can spend what money, and we don't just have, tens of millions of dollars just sitting there, and anytime someone shows up and say, hey, we need this, we can just go write a check.
So if you were elected to the county commissioner seat, you would be committed to lobbying the state, as pie in the sky ideas it may seem, to reallocate TDC dollars. into spending that would absolutely support the tourism industry here. I mean, that's what it says it's supposed to do. To do now. However, there's a lot of activities we can't spend money on that,
Correct.
with common sense, would seem would support the tourism industry.
I mean, it's definitely something that I guess we get asked that a lot. Would we be in favor of that? And I'm always like, of course. Why wouldn't I? Now, there's political realities of whether it's possible or not. And
you're going to be met with this is impossible right off the bat.
Sure, especially, but I look at that as a challenge, and it's one of the things that what I love about politics is, you basically anything's possible. Like nothing's impossible. It just, if we can't do it at the county level, then you go to the state level. You can't do it at the state level, then go to the federal level. There's always a way. Whether it's worth spending time on it or not, that's another story. But a lot of people don't realize this is a county commissioner. One county commissioner doesn't have the authority to do anything practically. I mean, seriously, they really don't have any authority. It's the body of the board of county commissioners. The 5 commissioners in our case. And when you want to get something done, you got to have 3 votes. We always say you got to count to 3. So really what one commissioner, what I think the citizens should care about out of a commissioner is just someone who is willing to work with the other 4 people next to him, regardless of who it is. Because if you can't work with the people the other elected officials that are there and the staff and want to work with them, you really have no hope of getting anything done yourself, but also you kind of paralyze the system. Commissioner Mike Barker said it really well in a meeting about a year ago I was watching, and he was saying how it's in the best interest of the citizens to have commissioners to have a board that votes 5-0 on things, because that means you got a united board and they're working with each other. When we get those 3-2 close votes, on something, it's like I always get nervous. It's like, man, we're divided. What's the saying? United we stand, divided we fall. And we have to be united. And it's just not a lot of people. That's what I find so interesting is there's this. One of the biggest. It's not one of the biggest problems. It is the biggest problem in this county. Is not infrastructure, it's not affordable housing, it's not all this stuff. Those are very important, but the number one problem is we have this toxic vibe, this toxic environment, and it's like we can't get along, and there's so much personal and political maneuvers and political stunts being made, with the human beings who are the elected officials or the staff or the citizen advocates, as some of them call it. It's like that's created such a toxic environment that it's almost impossible to fix infrastructure, because anytime someone's trying to do an initiative to get something done, the other side is just trying to get them to fail. Even if they're they might be like their beliefs deep down that they might actually agree with it, but they don't want the other side to get a victory, and it just creates this awful toxic vibe, and
so you think competitive political maneuvering is inhibiting progress in 100% Walton County?
It's been going on for decades now, and it is there's what's so interesting is I guess it's relevant to me because I've lived here my whole life, and I've always heard these things about Walton County government, and there's all this corruption and payoffs and things like that. I've heard it. You just kind of, whatever, you never really think of it when you're a kid and all that. Well then, when I started getting politically active, I kind of became more curious, and that's when I, started, getting involved in political campaigns, and then I actually, went to work for the county. And I couldn't find any of this corruption, I mean, and even more, I looked around, and a lot of people, who are in the system will tell you, it's like, you're looking around like waiting, where is it? I'm not going to see it. But you also see a system that is almost, we're under a microscope. Everything is public record. Everything is tracked. I mean, in the digital world we live in, like you really, everything's transparent. So it would almost be impossible for what they have said all these years to really be taking place. Okay, so I couldn't find it. So what I did, but I was curious, well, what's our problem then? Why can't we get stuff done? Well, so I looked into it. I started going asking my, family and friends and people who told me about all this corruption.
About the good old boy network.
Right, yeah, it's a good example. I would say, well, give me some examples like of like what did you ever see, and they would say, oh, I don't know, that's just what I've always heard. And I would say, well, have you ever been to a meeting? Have you ever been in, no, they've never been involved, never really seen it, they just heard it. And, it really kind of stuck with me because I was like, gosh, is it possible that this whole negative vibe was just a bunch of gossip that just got out of hand? And then when you see, there are some like, citizen advocates, as they call themselves or pretend to be, that, they almost make a living off it. They make a platform out of calling the government corrupt, but really what it is they're just, they want to use that for the next election to hopefully maybe, win the election and have a board, a majority on the board. And that's really bad when, like I said, when the whole political system, just becomes these same 15, 20 people fighting over something, whether it's not about whether it's right or wrong or what's best for the county, just, for maybe it'll help them in the next election or something like that, and that's politics, and you have to be able to, I can handle it. Like, I'm not worried about what people say about me, but we're never going to be able to get decent people to run in the future. We have to have a system where our best and brightest want to run for office. If you don't have that, I mean, right now it's it's an occupational hazard, like to run for office. Like, I mean, it's a commitment. Things get said about you that just often, vicious and often unfair attacks are made about you and your family and all these things, like just when you say that you're interested in running, and there's just not many people that can put themselves through that and their family and their business, through something like that.
Would you say the job of being a commissioner is a time commitment, is a full-time job? I mean, it's paid on a kind of a part-time salary.
Well, it should be. Whether it ends up being, I mean, the way I would answer that is because I'm just the biggest nerd on the planet. Like, I actually, when I was putting a platform together, I looked up, I was like, what is the job description of a county commissioner? Like, what's the so-called mission statement? And I looked up the state statute, and, basically the job description of, it's not even one commissioner, it's really just the Board of County Commissioners, is to essentially, develop policies and programs that benefit the health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of the county. And they put a budget together, they oversee, where the money is spent. But it's kind of vague. It doesn't say, there's no time commitment. It doesn't even say that they have to show up at the meetings. I mean, essentially, if they get elected, their only real function is to show up at those meetings every 2 weeks and vote when they call a vote. And it's not even required to do that. So now can be a good thing too, because it's like, basically, if a commissioner is elected, they can make that job into whatever they want it to be. And like I said before, one commissioner doesn't have the authority to do anything. So what you really hope commissioner, hope for a commissioner to do is to be influential. That's all we really have is, I mean, a commissioner does have the ability to give their opinion on something. They could probably get a meeting at any, state representative or senator's office, or state, county, or federal office. I mean, they're your representative, and I mean, there's a lot of things that I plan to really dig into that maybe the county commission doesn't have really any rational authority on, but I'm still going to really look into it, and because I feel if a county commissioner can't get something moving on it, who could? Good example, like cell phone signal. Okay, we have, I mean, one of the big things that I am starting a war against bad cell phone service in this county. There are places where, your call gets dropped. I mean, all of Freeport, it's just like the most awful signal. Now, does the county commission have like authority over that? No. But I'm going to become an expert on why, cell service in certain places is not sufficient, because that's something that affects every citizen's life. Like if you have bad cell service in places, I mean, think about that. Think of how bad that can affect your business and your livelihood or even your safety. I mean, if you go up into the north end of the county, I mean, I about got lost and ran out of gas the other day when I was out door knocking, and I was in a place, and I mean, up near Darlington, no cell signal, and I was about to run out of gas. I didn't know where I was. I mean, you really.
Did you hear any banjos playing in the background, or?
Yeah, I did, but you ran. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't.
Well, if an individual is bringing to the table their ability to lead or influence in this role, I mean, I think it just highlights the need to have a really talented person, as a leader, as someone who can pick which battles to go after and to be influential on. And, I guess the question I have is, what does a county commissioner make? 40 grand a year, 47 grand a year, something like that? Is that enough money?
I think it's like 49,000.
Is that enough money to recruit the top talent? Should people be recruited by money? I mean, should someone be motivated to take this job because it pays really well?
Yeah, that is a good argument. A lot of people say, I think it's a tricky one, because I basically would be, I'm basically saying, should I get paid more?
Well,
so it's a tricky situation. Yeah. It's like, I'm not thinking about money. It's not influencing, whether I would spend, full-time or part-time. Technically, it's a part-time job, which it'll be full-time for me. It'll be double time practically. I mean, it's going to be 24/7, and I'm really excited about that. There's not many people that can do that. There's not many people that can, take a detour on their career, to go be, a public servant. Now, changing it, from what I understand, it's pretty complicated. I think it might even require a referendum. I think the citizens have to vote for that. And there's all kinds of, I've heard arguments from both sides of why I actually don't know why it's a part-time job. That is crazy to me, because our other constitutional officers, like the property appraiser and the tax collector and the supervisor of elections, they're paid full-time, and I think their salary is like $120,000, which is like, all right, that's a pretty decent amount, for a executive level.
It's 3 times as much
job. So yeah, I think that would be great. If you know the history of Walton County politics, we don't. There's no telling why they've kept it that way, or why it's been kept that way, and what kind of opposition you would run into. And I don't know if it's definitely not the biggest concern we have right now, is how much we pay the commissioners.
What do you say about, or what do you think of when someone says development in Walton County?
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously, when someone says development, we're thinking, a planned unit, like a PUD or something like that, like a D.R. Horton type development with a lot of high density, things like that, like construction of houses. Usually, people are so concerned with the high density things. And, but let's face it, development could be anything. I mean, if we were building a school, it would be development. I mean, I'm also, a software developer. So the word, it kind of, gets, I don't know, the conversation kind of gets a little convoluted, but sure, people are worried about development in this county. They think that there's an overdevelopment problem. But
it's kind of a weird cross because there's an overdevelopment sentiment, but yet we have a housing shortage. I mean,
an affordable housing. And my response to that is we do have a affordable housing problem in this county, and I'm really
we'll contextualize the affordable housing problem. Who does it affect? I mean, what does our affordable housing problem look like?
Well, first off, I'm really happy to see our developers, so quickly take such a keen interest in helping out the little guy. All of a sudden, like this, it's the big conversation that they really want to help get affordable housing to this county. Now, I think this was coming because I think for so long we've been just the general focus, and I'm not saying the county government's focus, but just our businesses and us as a community. It just seems like we've been more focused on providing luxury short-term housing for the visitors that we kind of forgot. We look up and we don't have affordable long-term housing for our own citizens. Well, that's natural though in capitalism. I mean, businesses are going to serve the market that they can make the most money. That's natural. So it's complicated. It's a very complicated subject where everybody wants to come here. Land value is incredibly high, so developers buying a piece of property and putting houses on it, maybe to be rented or sold at a lower price, well, they're not going to make money. Like in fact, they're going to lose money. So I mean, a developer has to, if they're going to buy land and develop it, they can't, develop something that will not give them a return on their investment. So as far as the numbers, they can make more money by making something, luxury or something that would rent short term for thousands a week instead of $1,500 a month or something like that. And as far as the affordable housing, I mean, the only suggestion I hear anybody talk about is apartments. We have to build more apartments. Just build more supply. And I have a very unique experience with all this because after college, I couldn't afford to buy a house on 30A down here. So I've always rented, and I've always liked renting, and I still rent to this day. And I've lived in some very cool places along 30A. 2 blocks from the beach or something like that. I was always able to find a house that someone owned, that they just, maybe it wasn't a good short-term rental or for whatever reason, they rented it long-term. Now, I had to find it myself. It was always like, because I was from here and I'm born here, people. You had to know someone. But I was amazed at how there always was plenty of options out there. What there wasn't is, what there's not still to this day, is there's not a website to go find, the houses. There's not like an Airbnb or a VRBO. Think about short-term rentals. If we didn't have VRBO or Airbnb, and you just had to rent a hotel here, Like if you went on hotels.com, you're pulling into town, you would think we have a hotel shortage. How do people stay here?
Right.
Well, it's because we rent houses here, Well, it's the same thing with long-term rentals, it's like there's really there's no marketplace for it, and all the property managers are more focused on short-term. So there's no industry of long-term managers who are, marketing to people who have a house saying, hey, like I can get you, $2,000 a month if you put on this program and we'll take care of it. Like there's no long-term property management tradition in this county. There's a huge short-term tradition. So I'm convinced that the supply is there because you can add up how many people are here and go to the property appraiser's site and see how many single-family units there are in this county. It's a math problem. You can see that the supply is there. It's just maybe no one's marketing to these owners, or, there's no one to manage the property, or, the owner just doesn't, he doesn't want to put a for rent sign in the, no one really realizes that these websites, the marketplace is a, big part of the industry. Imagine, you're in real estate, imagine if there wasn't an MLS or there wasn't Zillow, and to go buy a house, you just had to drive around. It probably would change
whether
whether
the 60s.
Exactly. Well, that's the real estate agent. The job duty has changed over the years. Back in the day, the real estate agent, you would jump in the car and they would drive you around, and it was their job to know what's available because you wouldn't find that any other way. Well, that's what we got going on with long term, and so if you go on Trulia or some place where you would find long term, you're you might say, oh gosh, there's nothing out there, but
there is a shortage of housing that's offered on the long-term market.
Right.
There's enough rooftops to service everyone if they were available.
Correct. But my concern is they want to throw just more supply into the market, in the form of apartments. That you could get in the same problem we got into in 2008, when we had when that housing crisis happened. There was just way too much supply because they were just building, and they were loaning to anybody, who could build a house. And then we look up and there was way too much supply for the demand, and I don't think you should just throw more supply into the market without knowing that we got to confirm that we truly have a supply issue. And and it doesn't help when the talking points for these arguments are being created and spread around by the same people who would benefit financially from, because they're proposed. There's a lot of proposals out there. The developers some of them want free land. That they want the county to give them land to build on.
What would be wrong with that?
Because we are giving property away. We need to make sure that they are justified to be receiving free property before we give it to them. It's like, it could set a horrifying precedent if, you gave it to him, now you got to give it to me. And the big argument is, with the affordable housing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Under the context of developer, if you're going to pass this savings along to the marketplace in the form of reduced market rate rents.
Sure. Probably got, or the interesting debate, the thing that we need to look into is, the way that what is classified as affordable housing technically here is not necessarily affordable to a lot of people.
Well,
I think $1,700 a month.
I'm from Montgomery, Alabama. Mm-hmm. So if you go to the west side of Montgomery and you look for affordable housing, that's going to be a different picture than if you are a server in the peak season down here,
right,
making real good, but you still need something relative to the area that's affordable. And I do. Thomas Gallion, sorry to mention you, buddy, but I talk to him occasionally, and he is very quick to say that hiring people is one of their biggest challenges in the restaurant industry.
Huge problem.
Because people just don't have a place to live. Now,
Right.
personally, I don't think you can solve the problem south of the bay. I don't think there is enough developable land to make a meaningful impact on the attainable housing
Right.
issue. But, I mean, the county is big, and there's plenty of places that
Sure.
could take some affordable housing.
But
And still be within that geographic limit that's a lot better than coming from,
oh, that's great.
the
But
east side of
like,
Panama
it
City.
comes down to could the workforce actually afford it? Like that's the concern. Is like,
What do you think's an
if you
affordable
build it, will they
number?
come? I mean, well,
I mean, for say a 2-bedroom, 2-bath for a single parent raising 2 kids, what do you think's an affordable monthly nut to crack? I mean, there's no right answer.
right. I think
think 1,500
between
actually is-
1,500 is about max. For something like that. I
Right.
mean, we need. I think.
Now, right now, you can't find anything for $1,500.
No, it's going
all the way
higher
up to
and higher,
Paxton. Yeah.
and it's just I don't doubt that we have an affordable housing problem. I mean, we definitely have one, but the only suggestion that I hear, and the people who are suggesting it, are they're developers who are just licking their lips. I mean, I can see it in their eye, like they're all of a sudden excited about this, and I'm just like, I'm not buying it, is what it is. And so I'm going to do my own research. I'm not saying I'm an expert on it, but it's just it doesn't go right now. And there's no point in having affordable housing programs that produce housing that's not actually affordable to the average person. And the way they calculate that kind of stuff is they calculate average income of an entire population. And down in the South End, people, there's so many people making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year that they throw that number off. They're taking the average of the whole county, basically.
Right.
And so that's giving them this number that, $1,700 classifies as affordable. But it's just, I think if they just flooded the market with that, I don't think they would necessarily fill them up right away. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. And then they would start probably arguing, well, let us rent it out for short term since nobody will book it. Like, that's my concern. I think there might be a hustle there.
A Charlie Hustle?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're trying to hustle a hustler. You can't hustle Charlie Hustle.
Yeah. I mean,
Sounds like you're in on it.
yeah, I might be.
I know you.
I mean, the biggest issue around here that I think people feel in the back of their mind but don't really know what to do about is the whole customary use issue.
Yeah.
And the implications of customary use would be that people who offer their homes up to short-term vacation rentals now have to sort of disclose, or it becomes wide known that you're going to come and stay a block off the beach, but you're not going to have access to to get to the beach. So that becomes a less valuable property. So what do you think, in your opinion? I know this is looking at a crystal ball, but what do you think is the outcome of customary use, or what do you think the trajectory of customary use looks like?
I don't. What's interesting about that issue is I still am to this day. I support it from the beginning. It's my first. It's how I really got into politics, was public activism in favor of keeping customary use. Not because I was against private property rights. 30A would not be 30A without customary use. No one talks about the fact that what everybody loves about 30A, we don't have high rises, and that was only possible because, one, we have the height restriction, and two, these master plan communities, were developed, starting with Seaside, but even Seagrove and Grayton Beach and things like that, where you didn't have to be directly on the beach to still have a beach house. And that's the whole community and lifestyle. That's what everybody likes, and the only way that worked, was if you could just get to the sand, you could go to the left or right, and it was fine, and it really, I never thought about, like my whole life growing up, I never thought once about who owned the sand. I mean, because it truly was a real thing. It was I never even thought about it. It's the beach. The beach is the beach. It's almost like the water. Well, no one owns the water. Like I always, in my mind, looked at it as, the beach was just an extension of the Gulf, and it wasn't till you actually got into people's yard. Now, come to find out, somebody, screwed up and drew the plats all the way down to the water, and people were buying it and they were being taxed on it. So I get it. But it doesn't mean that I wasn't fighting for, the right to use it, because the whole tourism economy is built on people not having to stay right on the beach. I can name to you, every single beach access from Inlet to Miramar, our beach. Through my business and things like that, I'm so familiar with it. And I'm telling you, in my job, marketing houses, marketing real estate, vacation rental, there was not a time where I was photographing a property where I didn't have to just figure out where is the beach access, and get a photo that showed how close it was. People want to know how many steps they are from there. And so many of those accesses were right between two houses. And so when it was all happening, I was like, this doesn't work. Like you can't take this away all of a sudden.
Yeah.
There's all these people behind it that it could be, and truthfully, it was a transfer of wealth, in my opinion. It was just the Gulfront owners wanting the property value. It was like a teeter-totter. It's where across the board, the day that happened, a little value of the ones across, not on the water, transferred into the ones on the water. It's transfer of wealth, pure and simple.
As Daniel Day-Lewis said, and There Will Be Blood, I drink your milkshake.
Exactly. That is a good one. I was hoping you were going to quote Gangs of New York, because
I hate
that was literally what, you hate that one?
No,
the opening scene where they fight. That's what Customary use reminded me of, was that, it was the natives versus the private property owners, and most of the people who own a Gulfront houses, that they're not local.
Right.
They're absentee owners, not from here. And so I know what was done. It's one of those things that I don't think we'll ever get it back personally, but it's one of those things, like you never want to give up hope. You just can't, something you just got to hang on to, with me at least, because I know if we've lucked up, because a lot of the Gulfront owners are not enforcing it a whole lot, so it doesn't seem like it's that big of a problem. My concern initially was, what's going to happen when the owners realize, like, hey, this sand is valuable. I rent the house out daily, nightly, weekly. Why can't I rent the sand out? Like literally just the sand. That's why the beach vending is such an interesting topic, because, they kind of control access to the beach, and that's why it's something that I will fight for, and I will make sure that never gets out of hand, because they act like they're a bunch of surfer boys, we're just running a business. It's like, no, that's a serious business, because he who controls the keys to heaven rules the world.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I really appreciate your time. I hope you will come back and talk about more issues as the candidacy develops, and the run progresses. So I really appreciate you sitting here. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up while we're here? No
I
pressure.
think that's
we kind of got a good start, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Enjoyed it.
All right.